State Rep Tom Demmer taking some time out of his morning for us. Tom, good morning to you.
Morning, Riley and Scott. How are you?
We're doing great. How are you doing this morning?
It's a little rainy in Springfield, but it's okay. We're up and at 'em today.
Were you guys hard at work yesterday, Memorial Day, or just Democrats trying to pass some budget bills?
we were here, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I know you guys were there. Democrats were there working too. Mike Madigan stepping forward yesterday and putting forth what appears to be a budget about $4 billion out of balance or so, acknowledging that we don't have the money to pay for the budget Democrats apparently plan to pass. This is a repeat of what happened in 2014, right, Tom?
Yeah, it certainly is. We've seen a lot of budget games over the last several years by the majority party, but it's actually a little bit hard to believe that yet again this year, even with the change of power we've had, even with the election in which voters across Illinois really show that they want something different in Springfield, that they'd go back to the same old tricks, propose the same kind of out-of-balance budget, and really double down on the policies that got us into this mess in the first place.
And it's simply astounding. As we said, it's like Groundhog Day. We're waking up once again. Here we are, going to find ourselves in the same sort of problem with the same sort of arguments going back and forth again. With this time the intent to be to embarrass the wealthy yet rookie governor, right?
I guess that's part of it. I guess there's some sort of power play going on between the Speaker and the Senate President and the governor. But this is a budget that, obviously we have to do the state budget every year. This is a challenge that comes to us each year. It's difficult every year, as it should be. It's a very big piece of legislation that we have to pass. But, to reduce this to some sort of chess match between two individuals and, while kind of the fate of the state hangs in the balance is a pretty irresponsible way to play.
State Rep Tom Demmer with us. It's Riley and Scot on WROK. Mike Madigan estimates $36.3 billion is what that plan would cost. Again, we're going to have about $32 billion or so, $32.5 billion in revenue. Is that a detailed plan, Tom? I mean, have you guys seen the actual details in that $36 million or so budget that Mike Madigan's proposing?
So we're just starting to see those today. I sat on a appropriation for higher education meeting yesterday afternoon, voting on the first aspect of that, just the higher education portion of it. 9 o'clock this morning, I'm going to a human service appropriation meeting to, I assume, vote on the human services aspect of it. So it's starting to, over the course of about 5 or 6 meetings yesterday and today, come out with the actual legislative proposal.
So, the Speaker himself has come right out and said, listen, we don't have the dough for this. We openly admit that we don't have the money for it, but we're going to find the revenue.
That's always a problem. So, if we look at the way we've done budgets in previous years, and even at the end of the day, if we didn't like the result, we at least started on the same page in previous years. We'd start each year by passing, early in the year, in January, February, a resolution in both the House and the Senate that passed with bipartisan support and projected the amount of revenue we'd have in the next year. So that was kind of the first step of budgeting. How much money do we have to spend? And then we base the budget off of that. Well, this year we just ignored that. There's been no resolution to estimate how much revenue we have coming to the state next year. So this budget really is built on individuals' perspectives, I guess, and not built on the facts, not built on the actual amount of revenue that we have. So it's not surprising that at the end of the day we have a budget that's $3 to $4 billion out of whack, because we didn't really have a solid place to start from to begin with.
Tom, don't we have a balanced budget clause in the Constitution? How do we keep getting around? Well, how do Democrats keep getting around passing an actual balanced budget last year and apparently plan to do it again this year?
Well, there's a lot of creative mathematics that can happen when you're making the accounting for that. Last year when the budget was passed, there were one-time borrowing schemes and fund transfers and things that were counted as income or revenue that maybe weren't actually income or revenue. The budget was flawed to begin with. We pointed out that it was flawed to begin with. And then just a couple of months ago, we had to come back with a supplemental appropriation and fill what was more than $1.5 billion hole from the budget we passed last year. The truth is that this year's budget, the budget that's proposed by the Democrats right now, would lead to even more of that, lead to even more fund sweeps, lead to even more drastic borrowing and transfer initiatives, because there's just not the revenue to support the level of spending that they're talking about.
Now, Governor Rauner, up to this point, has spoken out and saying, I don't agree with that, I don't agree with this, and I'm not going to settle for this. But for the most part, has kind of kept it close to the vest. How long before we go from, a Cold War sort of thing to where we're openly sniping at one another over this?
Well, the governor, to his credit, has tried to put together working groups with members of both parties, members of both chambers, had real good faith negotiations over some big issues. The Democrats have basically walked away from those negotiating tables and decided to run this budget on their own, after dropping over Memorial Day weekend. So I think that they've kind of escalated things. The governor's not going to back down from a challenge, though. I think if these bills get sent to his desk, I think he's probably going to have some pretty harsh words. We're starting to see some of that, too, saying, look, I came down to Springfield to shake things up, to really make a change, try to get us out of the mess we're in, and we can't just double down on these failed policies.
State Rep Tom Demmer with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Governor very clear in the op-ed last week in the Springfield paper, and he has been clear on the campaign trail since he's been elected governor. Revenue is not off the table, but the reform must come first. If we're going to dip into taxpayers' pockets once again in any way, shape, or form, he says lawmakers should make some promises, in writing perhaps, that it won't be wasted, that it won't be thrown down a giant black hole of spending, that we really are changing business as usual in Springfield. Reform before revenue. Now, yesterday, Mike Madigan blew that totally off the table, saying none of those things should be on the table as we talk about budgeting. So there's very clear sides here, but I don't think the governor is going to back down here. He just was elected 6 months ago, about 6 months ago, to do the very thing he's doing right now.
Yeah, that's right, and I think it's such a reasonable approach, too, to say we obviously have significant problems in the state right now. It's not just financial. There are institutions that have grown or changed over the years and, put us into difficult negotiating positions, made things cost more than they probably should, put certain regulations and rules on us. If we're actually going to reform what got us into this problem, we've got to reform that foundation. We've looked at the level of spending we've had over several years. We had the tax increase that put billions and billions of dollars more into Springfield spending, and we still had a flawed foundation, so it didn't solve the problem for us. We can't keep kind of dumping money into a bucket with a hole in it. We've got to patch the hole in the bucket if we want it to ever be able to hold water.
And it certainly seems from looking at the way things are laying out, especially the speaker's comments from over the weekend, is, we're going to do what we've always do, the time-honored Illinois tradition of kicking that can on down the road.
Yeah, that's the very unfortunate part about this, that there's nothing genuine about the budget that's going to be passed this week. It's not negotiated. It's not a byproduct of bipartisan effort. It's not something that was done in concert with the governor. It's simply some sort of power play, some sort of move that's supposed to box the governor into something. It does not address the problems that we have in the state, and frankly, it does not do any kind of service to the people of Illinois.
Tom, the past 12 years or so, Democrats and Mike Madigan could do whatever they wanted and receive cover from the governor, Pat Quinn, on the same team. That's not the case anymore with Bruce Rauner in Springfield. Do you really think, do you think Mike Madigan will put his members on this vote, on record, on a budget that's $4 billion out of balance, and then leave it to the governor and some PACs that have been formed to hammer away at both Mike Madigan and individual members about an irresponsible vote to underfund the budget once again? Or is it just a negotiating ploy? Will Mike Madigan really force his members to vote on this?
That's a good question. It wouldn't be the first time that an irresponsible vote has been taken, and I'm not sure that reality has really sunk into a lot of legislators yet. That when in the past, when there's maybe been cover for things, or you've kind of had some leeway to pursue political votes, this is a real vote. This is a real budget. The people of the state of Illinois need to understand what kind of services the state can afford to provide, what they can't afford to provide, and how those things are going to happen for the next year. So to make this, to kind of walk into a problem that's another budget that's billions of dollars out of whack, I think the people of Illinois are going to see right through that charade.
And, just the optics on it are so bad, as we said at the onset when we began our conversation. Here we go all over again, the same sort of problems, the same sort of budget deficit that we've been dealing with over and over again.
That's exactly right. And, I think we've all been a little bit jaded by the kind of sham budgets that have been passed over the past several years. But even this is a little bit hard to believe that this is the proposal that it actually comes up again. It's kind of, I mean, you sit back and say, really, is this really what the Speaker wants to do here? And it's a little bit hard to understand.
State Rep Tom Demmer with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Now, on Friday, in both the House and the Senate, it's some bills proposed that are actually from the governor's turnaround agenda, not the sham votes that Mike Madigan put forward last week on these topics. Lawsuit reform, redistricting reform, term limits, some other things there as well. But we talked about this. It still has to go through the Madigan process, right? It has to go through committee. There's no guarantee that these bills that are being sponsored, that have the runner language or what the governor wants to see, actually will get votes in the House, right?
They certainly should get votes in the House. The Democrats have run around for the past couple of weeks putting up test votes that end up going nowhere on a whole wide range of initiatives. I think the governor's proposals certainly deserve at least that kind of treatment. But you're right, this has to go through a process. So at least in the Senate side, I heard that the bills the governor introduced were assigned to committee, and we'll have debates and votes in those committees. There's no guarantee they make it out, but at least they're going to have a chance to go through that process. As far as I know, in the House side, the bills have still been assigned to the Rules Committee, which is the kind of the very first step in the process before it actually comes to a group where you could have testimony and hear, take a vote and hear input. So I think that they should get that kind of treatment. I'm not sure whether the Speaker will allow that or not.
Tom, the session is supposed to end this weekend in Springfield. Could go overtime, of course, and the budget is the big question. What else, though, is on the table? What else might or what else has to get done, perhaps, before the end of this week?
There are a number of things that earlier in the year we thought might make their way around. There's yet again this year been a lot of negotiation and talk about a gaming expansion bill, one that could potentially bring a casino to Rockford. There's still a lot of negotiation on that. I'm not sure if that will be done and ready for a vote this year. There's a variety of other bills, too, that have been discussed. There's the Telecom Act, basically the act that allows all video and voice communication to happen in the state, sunsets this year, and so we've got to extend that sunset either this week or when we come back in October for veto session. There's been some talk about maybe a Medicaid reform bill. I think that's kind of being worked on the Democratic side right now, but there might be something that looks like that. It's a little hard to say, just how much oxygen the budget negotiation is going to take up this week, and whether or not there'll be room for any of these other initiatives, or whether each of those will just wait till October or next year.
State Rep Tom Demmer, what about the energy bills that are pending? There's a lot of talk and commercials and spending on a bill that's backed by Exelon to help out the nuclear plants in Illinois. There's a bill backed by the green power industry to perhaps increase the amount of green power used across the state. Will either of those pass? Where's the support level on those bills, as far as you know?
And there's actually a third bill in that mix too, one that's sponsored by ComEd.
Right.
So in each of those three, again, that's an example of. We've had a lot of discussion about that. There's been a lot of folks down here in Springfield talking about those three bills. It doesn't look like either one of them has the critical mass to go forward. So I don't think we're going to see that in this upcoming week. But that's, at least that opens the door, the fact that there's a lot of people paying attention to it and a lot of solutions on the table. So I think that might be something we deal with maybe in veto session this fall.
All right. State Rep Tom Demmer, as always, thanks for the availability this morning. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Great to talk with you guys.
Take care.